Have Muslim nations actually betrayed Iran? I mean, in this long-running conflict with the US and Israel, could it be that Iran's so-called brothers are just as responsible for its problems? These are the tough questions echoing around the world right now, all because of a really puzzling silence. Let's get into why.
So this is the heart of the whole issue. It's a huge paradox, right? When Gaza is attacked, you see this massive wave of Islamic solidarity, condemnation from everyone. But then, when Israel hits Iran, that unified voice, it just disappears. All you get is silence, and sometimes, behind the scenes, you even hear whispers of encouragement. So what is really going on?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with this apparent double standard, then we'll dive into Iran's accusations of betrayal, and flip it to look at the very real fears of the Arab nations. After that, we'll dig into the deep historical roots of this whole mess and look at the growing divide between the rulers and their own people. And finally, we're going to leave you with one last crucial question.
Okay, let's tackle this glaring contradiction head-on. The source material basically frames this as a kind of hypocrisy, one that has exposed some really deep cracks in the very foundation of this idea of a Muslim brotherhood.
I mean, the contrast is just night and day. On one side, any action in Gaza triggers this powerful narrative of Islamic solidarity, a united front. But on the other side, action against Iran, well, that tells a totally different story. A story of strategic self-interest, where that whole concept of the Ummah, the global Muslim community, seems to take a back seat.
So to really get this, we have to look at it from Tehran's point of view. You see, Iran doesn't just feel isolated. It feels like it's being actively and secretly betrayed by the very countries it calls its brothers.
And their central claim, wow, it's a heavy one. Iran is basically alleging that while its neighbors are up on stage talking about Muslim unity, behind the curtain they're giving critical support to the CIA and Mossad, and directly helping them run operations against Iran.
And look, these aren't just some vague accusations. Iran is pointing to specific things: secret safe houses used to plan the assassinations of its top nuclear scientists, the sharing of detailed military intelligence with Israel, and even opening up their airspace and land for missions against Iran. From their perspective, they are completely and utterly surrounded.
This feeling of betrayal isn't just a feeling, it's built on stuff like this. Iran looks at Azerbaijan and sees an Israeli military base right on its northern border. It sees Jordan actively shooting down Iranian missiles to defend Israel. It watches the UAE and Bahrain normalize relations and sees Qatar and Kuwait hosting these huge U.S. military bases. When you put it all together, it paints a picture of being systematically boxed in.
But of course, there are two sides to every story. To understand why these other nations are acting this way, you have to understand their deep, deep fear of Iran. And right here, this is the core of the problem. While Iran is screaming betrayal, a lot of the Arab monarchies see Iran as a genuine threat to their stability, to their very survival. They believe Tehran is actively trying to tear them down from the inside.
And this fear isn't just some abstract idea. They point to Iran's constant meddling in countries like Yemen, Syria, and Iraq, where it backs militant groups. They're terrified of Iran's revolutionary ideology, which is fundamentally against their own system of monarchies. And they think Iran's ultimate goal is to export its own 1979 revolution and replace their leaders.
So this is the crucial point. For these Arab nations, pushing back against Iran's influence became their top priority, more important than almost anything else. And this profound mistrust is what pushed them away from a supposed brother and, ironically, straight towards a traditional enemy like Israel.
You know, a conflict this intense doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. To really get what's happening today, we've got to rewind and look at the history that basically poisoned this relationship from the roots up.
It all really kicks off in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. This wasn't just a government changing hands. It was the birth of a whole new ideology that directly challenged the right of the Gulf's royal families to even exist. This political fear then got layered on top of that ancient Shia-Sunni religious divide, which got weaponized for political points. And all of that has fueled this modern-day power struggle for who gets to be the leader of the Muslim world.
So you see, it's not just one thing. It's this messy, complicated rivalry that's playing out on all these different levels at the same time. It's ethnic, Arab versus Persian, it's sectarian, Sunni versus Shia, and it's political, hereditary monarchies versus a revolutionary theocracy. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more complicated, there's another huge layer to this: the massive gap between what these governments are doing and what their own people actually feel.
The rulers, they're playing a strategic game based on alliances, money, and just plain regime survival. But down on the streets, in Pakistan, in Jordan, even in Saudi Arabia,
There's this huge amount of public sympathy for the Palestinian cause. And sometimes even for Iran, as the one country that seems to be standing up to Israel and the US.
And this is what makes the situation so dangerous. You've got people watching their own leaders make deals that feel like a complete betrayal of their religious and emotional beliefs. This quiet anger, it's like a volcano just simmering under the surface, and these regimes are trying desperately to keep a lid on it.
So as we start to wrap this all up, we're left with one last, pretty sobering thought about what the real cost of all this division has been.
The source material really makes you wrestle with this question. Who has actually hurt Iran more? Is it their sworn open enemies, the USA and Israel? Or is it the silent betrayal and strategic games of its so-called brotherly nations? And the argument it puts forward is pretty powerful. It says that the wounds you get from an open enemy, well, you expect those. You can fight back. But the damage done by the people who are supposed to have your back, by their silence, by their self-interest, that cuts so much deeper. It leaves a scar that might never fade.
And that brings us to our final question for you to think about. In this tangled web of power, fear, and history, have things like money, trade, and just the instinct for self-preservation completely shattered that ideal of a united Muslim world for good? It's a question with no easy answer.